right, well, I want to thank you all for joining us here tonight. I want to thank the 40 of us here that are live, and I want to thank the hundreds that will be watching on demand. Tonight, we're here to learn a little bit about the Museum of Bad Art. And this is an organization that we've hosted several times in the past in person, but really excited tonight to host them virtually. We're joined by Louise Sacco, who's the Executive Director of the Museum of Bad Art. And I know that's kind of your title, Louise. You can give me the full title. It's a mouthful. We're here to see some of the worst art that we've ever seen. The Museum of Bad Art has collected, exhibited, and celebrated the worst art for more than 20 years. Louise will describe the thinking behind the museum, their selection criteria, and its relationship to their artists. She'll also share many of the museum's masterpieces that belong in the world's leading and only museum dedicated to bad art. And as a bonus special added treat, Louise is joined here tonight by Michael Frank, who is the curator of the Museum of Bad Art. And briefly, as I mentioned, the library has partnered with area museums, aquariums, and zoos to host virtual learning opportunities every Thursday this fall. And this entire series, including tonight's event, is brought to you with federal funds provided by the Institute of Museum and Library Services and administered by the Massachusetts Board of Library Commissioners. So as I said, all 40 of us, let's give a big round of applause to Louise and Mike for joining us here tonight. And Louise, you can take it away. Thanks so much.
I am so pleased to be back at the Tewksbury Public Library. This is my third visit, I think, but first time virtually, and this will be fun. I'm sure of it. I'll finish my introduction that Robert started. I am Louise Riley Sacco. I'm the permanent acting interim executive director of the Museum of Bad Art. We don't get salaries here, but we have interesting titles. And if you want to reach me, the email is easy, director@museumofbadart.org. Our curator is helping us tonight. He's Michael Frank, who's the curator and chief of the Museum of Bad Art. And Mike's email, of course, is curator@museumofbadart.org. I'm going to jump right into this because we have a lot to try to cover in an hour or so. In 1993, Scott Wilson, an antiques dealer, found a painting in an ornate frame in a pile of trash on the side of the road. He put it in his car, planning to toss the painting and sell the frame. He stopped to visit his friends, Jerry Riley and Mari Jackson. When he showed them his find, they convinced him that this painting was too good to throw out, so they hung it over their fireplace. They invited friends to find similar pieces, then mounted the art in Jerry and Mari's basement and officially opened the Museum of Bad Art. I was on that founding team because Jerry is my brother. As we show each piece, I'm going to read the MOBA interpretation to you. We'll start with the piece that started it all that fateful day that Scott Wilson found Lucy in the Field with Flowers. The motion, the chair, the sway of her breast, the subtle hues of the sky, the expression on her face. Every detail cries out masterpiece. This piece started it all, and in no time at all, we were in the middle of a worldwide tsunami of publicity, and visitors started showing up at Jerry and Mari's house. We were ahead of our time in a lot of ways. We were organizing pop-up events before they were called pop-up events. We had Art in the Alley, that was in a bowling alley. We had Art Goes Out the Window, that was in a campground. We had an all-nude show in a gymnasium, and we had a show in a car wash, which of course had no watercolors. We outgrew the space in Jerry and Mari's home and found gallery space in the basement of a local movie theater, the Dedham Community Theater, which became our permanent home for about 15 years. That space was infamous for the fact that it was adjacent to and allowed everyone to appreciate the sounds and smells of the men's room. 12 years ago, we moved across town to the Somerville Theater, and again in the basement, not far from the restrooms. And this was another historical theater. Last year, though, the theater management decided they had other uses for the space that was more important than hosting a world-renowned cultural institution. So we were forced to close that gallery. Right now, we are looking for more space, and we're leading the curve as other major museums in the world close their doors to the public and create virtual events. MOBA's success surprised everybody, and one aspect of that is that we've had traveling shows. That's me and Mike in Tokyo in 2018. We've had shows in Taiwan and in Ottawa, and we had expected to have an extended show in Quebec this summer, but you know, pandemic. It does look as if we'll be able to go to Quebec next summer, so we're looking forward to that show. Like every other major museum, we can only exhibit a small fraction of our collection at any one time. We have at least 600 works, and many have been in deep storage for decades. Today, with the magic of digital images, we can share old and new works with you. The curator has a major responsibility to find and accept art for the collections. He only expects pieces that he believes were created in a sincere effort to make an artistic statement. But something has gone horribly wrong. It's really important when you think about what we're doing to remember that the word art is in our title as well as the word bad. And we're looking for things that are created as sincere pieces of art, someone trying to communicate something, but something went wrong in a way that makes it interesting, compelling, and that we want to share. Before we share any new piece, we interpretate the art. Now, before you try to correct my grammar, interpretate is the word we need, because just interpret is inadequate for what we do. So we interpretate. The interpretations, along with information about the provenance of the work, are always posted with the art. Some fans just glance at images on Facebook or Instagram. If they don't read the interpretation, they miss most of the point of MOBA. So when you encounter MOBA art anywhere, books, museums, online, be sure to scroll down and read the interpretations. They will enhance your visit and may help you appreciate the art, or maybe not. When we share the art on Facebook, everyone is free to voice their own reaction, opinion, or interpretation too. And it's okay if you disagree with us. It's okay if you disagree with any museum. A basic question that we come across all the time is, what is bad art? And to understand what is museum quality bad art, I'm going to show you some things that do not meet our criteria. This is Velvet Crying Elvis. Velvet Elvis is a thing a genre onto itself. But this is kitsch, it's not sincere art. And Mike, our curator, says about this, I can't help wonder what he's crying about. But this nice piece of kitsch was unfortunately stolen from our gallery. However, we do have other homages to Elvis. There it is. Sorry, there it is. Pablo Presley. Pablo Presley, a refreshing multicultural treatment of one of the most beloved icons of the 20th century. And yet another Elvis in our collection is Elvis descending a staircase. Employing materials often associated with kitsch, the artist presents a variation on a theme by Marcel Duchamp, reflecting the steady decline of an American legend. But back to things that are not bad art. Paint by numbers is not bad art. They're not appropriate for our collection, but they can be fun. And in fact, Mike visited some folks who had collected hundreds of paint by numbers, and you could see the variations in the same project and different people did it, sometimes deliberately using all the wrong colors. Something else that's not bad art is commercial art. These are just wall decorations. These are the things you see in hotel sales and things like that. Also, Thomas Kinkade is famous. I think that this painting has electric lights behind it. This was obviously an ad for one of the prints of a Thomas Kinkade piece. And this is a good time to mention that when we say that a work is not bad art, we don't mean that it's good. It may be that it's not art at all, not sincere, not original, or maybe it's just uninteresting, or maybe it really is good. That doesn't happen often with the pieces that are offered to us. Something else that you'll encounter that's not for us is tourist art. If you're on a cruise ship or in a tourist area and people are selling art by the side of the road, it's made in basically an art factory, and not for us. Except that our curator, well, let me just get back up a minute here, yeah. I want to say a few words about museum curators. They sometimes talk as if their curating decisions are made with rational, consistent, scientific rules. But the truth is that what any curator accepts into any museum is whatever the curator says should be accepted. With that in mind, I want to show you something that was sold as kind of as tourist art, but our curator decided that it deserved to be in our museum. This is a celebration of the beautiful women and cigars of Cuba. And Mike bought this on his first visit to Havana. What he said is, I am obviously allowed to break my own rule, and I believe this to be compelling enough to be accepted into the collection. So there it is. Some more things that are not bad art are kitsch, for instance, art on a toilet seat, and craft kits, needlework or craft kits. In addition to the things I've been showing you, we also do not have important art in our collection. That is art that you might find in a traditional museum. But we're going to look at a few of those pieces to compare them to MOBA art. This is Mask of Fear by Paul Klee, and the image is inspired by a Zuni war god sculpture. It was created around the time Hitler assumed power in Germany. I don't know if those facts are related, but there they are. But today, Paul Klee's paintings sell at auction for $5 million, way beyond our budget. But this painting in our collection has a little bit of the same feel. What we have to say about this one is, come on, why the long face? Another painting that many of you will know that's not for us because it's important art is Der Milkmaid by Vermeer. Vermeer was a Dutch Baroque period painter who specialized in domestic interior scenes. Only about 36 of his paintings survive. In 2004, one of his paintings sold at auction for $40 million. This is also way beyond our budget. But we have The Milkmaid. The Milkmaid, apparently fond of Vermeer's Milkmaid, the artist chose to brighten her austere work environment with a lovely bouquet of flowers. And if you also noticed, he aged her by about 40 years. There and there. But this has been one of our favorites for a long time. Some more important art is Dance at this series by Renoir, Dance at Bougainville, Dance in the Country, Dance in the City. And one of these pieces, in fact, is a favorite in the Museum of Fine Arts in Boston. We have none of these in our collection. We do have Bailando. The artist celebrates the joy of social dancing in this delightful depiction of a Mexican couple. And along the same lines in the museum is Blue Tango. We see a stylishly handsome couple mid-step as they glide across the floor, cheek to cheek. And this also brings us to, sorry here, I'm having a little navigation issue, but we'll get back. We've divided the MOBA collection into smaller collections, and I'm going to share some examples from each of the various collections that we have. The first one is the MOBA Zoo. Blue Tango is part of the MOBA Zoo, which includes our furry, feathered, and fishy friends. And Bruno the tiger. It is interesting to ponder the fate of the owner of the rucksack next to a Bengal tiger standing in shallow water. It's probably safe to conclude that the owner has abandoned the pack and is the object of Bruno's hungry, vaguely man-faced gaze. There are other paintings of tigers, lions, and other wild beasts in the MOBA collection. And once again, we anticipated the public's interest in big cats with this whole thing. Giraffe at the beach. Knowing his species does not swim, a lone giraffe stays very close to the beach as he walks gingerly in a rough sea. Perhaps he has strayed so far from his normal grassy savanna habitat in a desperate search for relief from the noxious yellow cloud that hovers incessantly around his head. Centaur and biker. A centaur and a motorcyclist race on a beach to determine how much progress has been made since the Greek gods reigned. One of the things that is good for us about our zoo collection is that people who are learning to paint and trying to paint love to paint pictures of their pets. So we do end up with lots of dogs and cats, although we didn't have any right here. The next collection we'll talk about, the specialized collection, is unlikely landscapes and still lifes. In addition to the still lifes and landscapes, this collection also includes works with over-the-top imagery, such as Easter Island. This is a panoramic view of the seldom visited women's section of Easter Island, a tiny, isolated Polynesian island famous for its ancient stone figures, known as Mau. Time and gravity have clearly taken their toll on this particular ancient statue. Disassembled light bulb, X-Acto knife, industrial waste, egg, and Pez dispenser. The artist offers a series of images of destruction in the distance, as well as in the foreground. Most disturbing, though, is the imminent decapitation of the cheery Pez dispenser horse. In Waterfall, the snow-capped peaks tower over this summer meadow, featuring evergreens, wildflowers, and a waterfall of mysterious origin. MOBA curators speculate that the peak in the distance is probably Gorilla Mountain. Take a look. I see gorillas in the mist there. Another thing that the waterfall illustrates is that sometimes there are characteristics that we see again and again. And in a lot of our landscapes, there are bodies of water that start and stop for no particular reason. And they just seem to come out of nowhere. And you see that here in the waterfall. This is no visible means of support. Free from the constraint and apparently the force of gravity, pink carnations stand independently tall and proud and in full bloom. This is, to me, one of the simplest pieces in our collection, but one that just makes me smile every time I see it. I'm very fond of it. I'd like to mention as we go along that if you would like to be on our mailing list, just type your email address into the chat section. MOBA News will come to you now and then when we have something to tell you, not terribly often. While there are many images of animals, landscapes, and still lifes, the large majority of paintings portray people. We call them our poor traits. And the first of these is Swamp Picnic. An attractive couple enjoy a private moment at the water's edge. The artist seemed to be sharing his vision of a dystopian future in which fashion-conscious hipsters living with rising sea levels and widespread pollution wear his and her hazmat suits. Sad baby. Lost puppy, no one to play with, nothing on TV. What sad fate has befallen this young beauty with the big red bow? Her life is so empty, she must conjure up an imaginary shelf on which to lean. This was a piece that this is a piece that we took to Taiwan when we had a show there. And imagine our excitement when we met Sad Baby at the show in Taiwan. Worried Man. This is a big piece of art. It's 3 feet by 4 feet. It's heavy, it's big, it's impressive. And that hair is bits of wire that are tangled around and sticking out. Rosalie Gale rescued this painting from a dumpster in Seattle. She said it was huge and scary. He has metal wire hair and fingernails and staple eyebrows. I decided that since the guy looked so worried, I would write down all the stuff I worry about all the time and stick them to his wire hair. Then I'd just let him worry about them. Among the worries she let him assume were large bodies of water, having too much stuff, money, staying home from work, and spiders. We haven't heard from Rosalie if this was effective in relieving her of her worries. Since there are so many paintings of people, we created a sub-specialty collection, such as doppelhangers. Doppelhangers are images that resemble famous people, whether that was intentional or not. And Donnie and Marie Osmond, this is a publicity photo of them at the height of their fame in 1977. Donnie and Marie wear matching clothes, hair, and smiles. A little bit country, a little bit rock and roll. The Osmonds were a talented show business family, Salt Lake City's answer to the Jackson family from Detroit. Donnie and Marie emerged as the family's stars, like Michael and Janet Jackson. This photo was taken from their TV variety show in the early 1970s, and a fan painted this in homage. The artist expressed her appreciation with the text on the right-hand side of the picture, which says, "One need not sit on a dark night looking heavenward for the brightest stars. He has but to be in a darkened hall watching the greatest of the greats, the Osmonds." Another famous person that we have is President Clinton. A white-knuckled Bill Clinton is portrayed furtively, glancing away from the viewer. The artist's rendition of the president's tie offers a clue into the source of his tension. And let's stick with the presidential theme. And this is the Reagans and the Bushes. The painting arrived at the MOBA Ivory Tower quite recently. It's a formal yet relaxed portrait of the two first families. Our crack curatorial department did some research and found this photograph taken at the opening of the Ronald Reagan Presidential Library in 1991. And clearly this piece was a bit taken from the photograph. Where the Carters, the Fords, and the Nixons don't appear in our painting, and we are hopeful that there's a companion piece. The donors have agreed to scour the thrift shops in Virginia and Washington when they open again, of course. We would love to have a complete set of presidents done by this same artist. Jazz hands. In spite of her unfortunate haircut, which was fashionable at the time, Liza Minnelli's remarkable stage presence at the peak of her career is evident in this portrait. The artist believed her inexperience with paint and brush caused her to miss the mark, so she stored her painting in a damp garage for 27 years. What appears to be chest hair on the pop icon is actually mold. The next collection we're going to talk about is Oozing My Religion, Religion influences a lot of art and has inspired much classic art through the years, and things that that we see in traditional museums. So of course we had to have our own collection of religious art. The organ master stares, transfixed by twin mysterious visions, the Neanderthal saint in the setting sun and the Gothic monk proceeding from the cathedral's inner sanctum. Each is framed by a halo of organ pipes, reminiscent of number 2 pencils. Our Lady of Perpetual Housework. Fetchingly attractive St. Martha is depicted in recognition of the fact that in the spiritual as well as the physical realm, a woman's work is never done. The MOBA sports section starts with, this is a, George Bellows was one of the Ashcan school of artists who painted scenes of daily life in New York City's poorer neighborhoods in the late 19th century and early 20th century. Their works of social realism were designed to document the difficult lives of working class. This painting depicts a particularly violent boxing match between heavyweight champion Jack Dempsey and his Argentinian challenger, Luis Angel Firpo. The Wild Bull, Firpo is called the Wild Bull. The fight lasted just 4 minutes with 11 knockdowns. Here we see Dempsey being knocked through the ropes. He came back and won the fight in the second round. You can find videos of this on YouTube if you really want to see torture. Our piece is called A Point of Impact. The artist uses faux high-tech medical imagery in what appears to be a death mask and a violent image of the pugilists in action to illustrate the inherent danger confronting all the faceless athletes who engage in the sweet science. But in spite of his special effects, if you look at the pose of the fighters and then look back at the Bellows piece, you can clearly see where the inspiration came from. Casey at the bat. Asymmetrical limbs and a flexible bat help this all-star develop tremendous torque at the plate. The spectators silently gaze, transfixed. From the look on his face, we might infer that the mighty Casey has, in fact, struck out. The smallest MOBA collection is an assortment of paintings that focus on the window to the soul, the human eye. The I collection includes paintings such as Here's Looking at You. Larger than life and unencumbered by eyelashes, a solitary green eye looks menacingly silent. Light at the end of the tunnel. While it's commonly recognized that eyes are portals to the soul, gazing into this one is disturbingly like staring down the barrel of a gun. The eyes here creep me out when I see these one eye staring at you. No visit to a museum would be complete without exiting through the gift shop, of course. So here you can find t-shirts, mugs, calendars, books, postcards, and you can order a print of almost any painting in the collection. Just a word about MOBA and how we keep this all going. I mentioned earlier that nobody is salaried at MOBA, and a lot of our events and our museum has been free. So the way we pay our bills is by getting donations and by selling the typical museum gift items. And in fact, to be topical and right on retail trends, we now have MOBA masks. If you're interested in a MOBA mask or 2 or 4, send a note to moba@museumofbadart.org and we'll send you back info on how to get your very own mask. You've seen Lucy in the Field with Flowers and Pablo Presley today. On the third one on the right, it's Mona Lisa, which, as you can imagine, is closely related to the classic Mona Lisa, but has a pretty different effect on people. If you're the President of the United States or someone else who prefers not to wear a face mask, you could simply donate money to help us out. That would be at museumofbadart.org/donate. And the other thing I want to, and you can donate art. If you've got a piece that you that you think belongs in the Museum of Bad Art, send a photo by email to the curator at museumofbadart.org. It really helps if you tell us everything you know about the piece, about the art, the artist, where it came from, the whole provenance of the piece, why the artist created it. And if Mike decides it is suitable for our collection, then you get to be an art donor. And your name will be always listed with the piece as the donor. Another way to see more of MOBA is, well, of course, our website, www.museumofbadart.org. There are lots of pictures organized into the kind of galleries we were talking about today. You can also go to YouTube. A version of this talk, a longer version actually, as well as a couple of others, including one called In the Nude, and another one titled Living in Tough Times, From Having a Bad Day to Dystopian Apocalypse, are on YouTube, and a whole series of short pieces that feature one MOBA piece and often talk about what it was inspired by or what we see in it. I'm going to, one more time, I'm going to ask you to please leave your email on the Zoom chat panel or send a note to MOBA at museumofbadart.org and tell us who you are. And we are now at the end of the prepared notes, and hope you enjoyed learning something about MOBA, and I hope you've got some questions or conversation for us. Mike, have we got any questions that we should try to answer?
Not yet.
So don't be shy, folks. And one other thing, you know, Louise, if people aren't comfortable typing their email address into the chat, folks can also email me, and I'd be happy to pass along any email addresses for folks who might want to sign up for the newsletter.
They can send it to me directly, privately.
Oh, and that's a good point. Yep. So folks can also send a private chat message to Mike with their email address. That way everyone won't see your email address.
As long as we have an extra couple of minutes here, but I'd just like to talk a little bit about what it's been like to be part of this from the start. I was one of the founders in 1993, and the expectation at that point was that this was going to be a one-time event, a party at my brother's house called the Museum of Bad Art. And about 50 people were invited to the party. By midnight, there were about 200 people in his little house because people were calling their friends saying, you've got to come and see this. We had at that time maybe 30 pieces of art that we had hung on the walls. We had interpreted them and put up the descriptions, and it was a hit right from the start. We ran it at the museum in his house for almost a year, and until a bus full of seniors from Rhode Island pulled up on his little street, and we decided we had to get out of there. But the thing that has kept us going is that the media has loved what MOBA does. I just today, Mike and I got a link from an article in an Argentinian art magazine that was published this week. We've had a bunch of pieces in all over Europe because one of the news agencies there did a piece on us, which got published all over the place. And the press has been good to us, and we've enjoyed doing it. We've managed now with no gallery at all for people to come to, and interest still keeps up. We have 60,000 visitors, 60,000 followers on Facebook. We've got about 30,000 people on our email list. So it is something that really has got the attention of lots of people. A question that always comes up that I'll throw in if there aren't any other questions is how do the artists feel about having their art in this museum? And our experience has been that artists almost universally are pleased when they find out we have one of their pieces. You know, when we are doing something with a piece, we often we investigate, try to find the artist. We seldom can. But the artists realize that we are celebrating what they do. We never say anything mean. We don't say anything bad about the art or the artists. We help find an audience. We raise questions, and we find a home for art that wouldn't find a home anywhere else.
Okay, Louise, I have a few questions.
Yes.
Some are related to what you've just been talking about. People ask how large the collection is, and I say we have over 500 paintings.
I think it's closer to 600, but so somewhere in that neighborhood.
We have,
And
and they're in storage in various places, which is why it's confusing. Do you ever have anyone interested in purchasing your pieces?
Yes, people do want to purchase pieces now and again. We're not an art gallery that sells art. What we offer them is a poster. They can get posters made of most pieces, or one of the high quality canvas prints that's, you know, more money, but we will get copies made. We say our pieces are not for sale. On the other hand, if anybody's got an offer that has maybe 4 digits in it, I'd listen. We'd consider it. But most of our art is acquired from thrift stores, yard sales, or very often somebody's aunt or grandparents died and they're clearing out the house. We get a lot of art from dead people's houses.
Maybe you should stop sharing your screen so we can see you.
Oh, okay, I'll do that.
And in the meantime, somebody asked how artists feel about finding their work in our collection. So I would just like to say most of the time, people who find their pieces in our collection are happily surprised and usually pretty happy about it. There have been a few times when that's not been the case. And if somebody has any problem, we take the picture down and send it back to them, because we're certainly not out to make anybody feel bad.
Yeah, I have one little story about that. We had a piece in our first book, which was, I think, in 1995. 5 or 6 or 7 years later, someone called me and said my neighbor was the artist who painted that picture. And she said, he wanted me to tell you that you got it right. You understood him. The interpretation that we had come up with this piece was perfect. So we sent him a copy of the book and wished him well. And that's kind of been the sort of reaction that we usually have. I'm looking at the chat now, and I see there's a question about, will there be a permanent gallery? There will. We don't know where. We don't know when. In the current environment, it's hectic.
Yeah.
If you've got free space for us, let us know.
Somebody asked if we have paintings from famous artists, and some of the paintings have become famous. Some of the paintings in the collection have become famous, but by artists who were not previously famous, such as Lucy in the Field with Flowers.
I see a question from Eileen saying, why did the artist paint flowers not in a vase? Exactly our question. That's a big part of why that is in our collection, because you look at it and say, why? One theory I've heard is that the artist got that far and decided not to finish it and put the vase on. I don't know. I'm just taking another look at the questions that are here. Well, I'm going to answer one other question that we do get now and again, but we didn't get tonight, and that is, well, actually, there are 2 of them. One of them is people who want to say, but there's no such thing as bad art. And I say baloney. If there's no such thing as bad art, there's no such thing as fine art. We make judgments, and there is some consensus in our society about what's good and what's bad. And our art is never going to make it in a traditional museum with traditional criteria. And then sort of the next question after that is, well, who are you to decide what's bad? We're the Museum of Bad Art. Who else would decide? We are the world's leading, perhaps only, museum dedicated to bad art, and we've been doing it now since 1993. So you don't have to agree with us. And that's the other thing. You certainly don't have to agree with us or with any other museum.
So Louise, Diane wanted to know, do you name the paintings?
If the piece comes in with a name on it, either because the artists themselves sent it in or because there's a name on the back of it or something, we try to use that name if it makes any sense at all. If it doesn't have a name or if it's something that just doesn't fit, that's Mike's department, the curator's department. And I will say that the interpretations are largely Mike's. Sometimes people donate a piece with at least the beginning of an interpretation. And occasionally I add a word or two, but it's been Mike's department for the last 20 years.
I would tell, somebody asked if we have sculpture in the collection. We do have some, but we don't really encourage it because it's much more difficult for us to store and to show sculpture. It's easier to pile paintings one on top of the other. And we have bins full and garages full of paintings. And
I think another reason we don't have much sculpture is also it's easy for people to hang on to a painting. You can stick it under the bed or in the back of a closet. It's not so easy to hang on to a sculpture. It's for the same kind of reasons.
we do have
There's a question here about, have we had any reactions from traditional curators or traditional museums? Yeah, we have, and it's been almost universally positive. We've got a lot of people from the Museum of Fine Arts and the ICA in Boston, museums like that are fans and are part of what we do. The only time I can remember a museum person being unhappy was at the Montserrat School of Art in, I think, Beverly, Massachusetts. Years and years ago, we did an exhibit there. And there was not a curator, but an art professor there who was just irate about our exhibit. And it wasn't till a little while later, a few weeks after our exhibit closed, that we found out that he had had an exhibit in the same space and had very low attendance, and we got great crowds, so he didn't like that at all. But most museums understand what we're doing and approve of it.
Somebody asked, how large is the staff? And basically you're looking at us.
We occasionally put a call out for volunteers to help hang a show or do something like that. And we have a small board of directors that helps out with a few things, but yep, Mike and I do it.
I would remind people, the best way to keep up with us is to follow our Facebook page. You can find that easily by just looking for us, looking for the Museum of Bad Art at Facebook. And sometimes people tell me, well, I don't do Facebook. You don't have to have a Facebook account to see our Facebook page. I believe you have to have an account in order to comment. And what's interesting about the Facebook page is that people can opine themselves about the art that we display. And
actually, that brings up something that I also would like to mention. Mike sometimes is not happy when people say it's not bad art, I like it. We like all of it. We wouldn't do this if we didn't like this art. We love it. We celebrate it. We want to share it. But we know that doesn't meet any traditional standards of good art. It's not going to make it anywhere else. So if there's a continuum from good to bad, it doesn't correlate well with I like it or I don't like it.
Yeah.
So let's say last call for questions. So folks, if you have any questions, type them into the chat. We'll give it another 30 seconds. And then if not, we'll let Louise and Mike wrap up. We'll give it 30 more seconds.
Okay. Oh, I like this. Are we artists ourselves? No, we are not. The only person that really had any kind of an art background was, if you remember the name Scott Wilson, was the guy who found that first piece and started it all. And Scott was a couple of credits short of a degree in art. We tried to get Mass College of Art to give him an honorary degree based on his work at MOBA, but they wouldn't go for it. But Scott had almost had a degree in art. Mike has learned an awful lot over the years because he does research pieces and backgrounds and, you know, tries to learn what might have influenced a piece. And so he has become pretty knowledgeable. But I don't think he creates art, do you, Mike?
Not visual art, no. I'm a professional musician.
Right.
At least I was a professional musician before COVID.
Right.
You can still play music, but there's not much work.
Right. And there's a question, Mike, this is for you. How do you plan to develop curation in the future? You're going to keep doing the same old, same old?
Develop curation it sounds like something growing on your skin. And I don't really understand the question.
Okay, I don't either. But no. So
I would just remind people to follow us follow our Facebook page, which is where you'll see. It's not done on a regular. It's not a weekly basis, but we do post art there with an interpretation, and you have the opportunity to comment yourself. Also, you can, if you go to our Facebook page and you look through the photos, you'll see hundreds of pictures that are up there already that you can spend hours getting lost in the collection.
And as far as the e-news, MOBA e-news goes, we tend to send that out 4 or 5 times a year when there's, you know, something to tell. So those of you who gave us your email address, thank you.
All right, seeing a lot of positive comments in the chat, a lot of thank yous, a lot of great jobs. So Louise and Mike, do you have any final words for the group that you want to leave us with?
I'd like to say support every museum you can, whatever way you can. It's a tough time for museums, and they're important. So do what you can. And
Mike, any words from you?
Well, I say basically the same thing. Thanks for your interest, and hope you'll enjoy looking at the museum.
Great. So for all those watching live, just a reminder that I'll be sending an email tomorrow morning with a feedback survey. Please fill that out. Let me know what you thought of tonight's program and what you'd like to see for future programs. And speaking of Facebook, we did live stream this successfully on the library's Facebook page. I encourage people to go there. Just search for Tewksbury Public Library on Facebook. You'll find us. And then please share this video with anyone you think may be interested in the Museum of Bad Art. So I want to thank Louise. I want to thank Mike for a great hour, and want to wish everyone a lovely rest of your evening. So thank you all so much for coming, and I hope to see many of you next week for the Museum of Russian Icons. Thanks again, and everyone have a great night.